What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? So this is going to be a response video to Big J XXX, which he did a response video to my gay reparations video. Now, first off, I'd like to say thanks to you, Big J, for your invitation to do a live stream. Although at this time, I'm still on a kind of no live stream kind of diet thing, where I've done some live streams in the past and they didn't really go too well. And I mean, if you want to know about it, you can ask me in the comments, but I'll just leave it at that. But I do appreciate your invitation, and I also appreciate the fact that you recognize me as a black person, which some people don't recognize me as. So that's cool. I appreciate that. Now, as far as the video itself goes, the gay reparations video, if I remember correctly, it's a bit of a cynical and tongue-in-cheek take on the arguments, I guess you could say, from a kind of more libertarian position, where I guess my main position in that is that we just really shouldn't be asking the government for anything. We shouldn't be asking the government for help, because basically whenever government for help, it comes with strings attached, and it just never seems to work out in the favor of those who are asking the government for help in the first place. And so the video itself is a bit cynical, I guess you could say, or satirical in a sense. I don't think you should take it too seriously. It's just kind of poking fun at asking for government handouts and asking the government to fix stuff for you, when in actuality, people really need to kind of realize that the only people that are going to fix things for them are themselves. Or at least that's my opinion on it. I mean, maybe the government can fix some roads or something like that, but when it comes to complex social issues and things like that, the government hasn't gotten it right ever in the past, so I don't see how they're going to get it right in the future all of a sudden. But again, that's just my opinion on it. Now, as for the topic of reparations itself, it sounds like a good idea. It sounds like I said in the video, it sounds like somebody should recognize the, contributions that black people made to this society and worldwide, whatever. But I think that those things are social things that need to basically be agreed upon by society, not forced onto society by the government, because that is going to make some people pissed off if they're forced to do it and they don't see how they're responsible, or they're probably not responsible. I mean, you were referencing the Jim Crow laws, and yeah, there's definitely some people alive from that. I mean, my parents both grew up during Jim Crow and stuff like that, so I can see their position on those type of things. And really, I guess what the issue comes down to me personally, it's not just a money thing, because money isn't really going to solve the problems that are within the black community. Because that, to me, at least from my perspective, is a big part of why people are asking for reparations in the first place. Because when you look at the black community, the African American community, and you see that most other immigrant groups or the different ethnicities of white people, whether it's like Italian, Irish, English, French, whatever, that came over at any point in history, seem to have moved up, at least from whatever station that they were originally at. Be it the Italians and Irish were basically treated the same as black people, but now they're considered respected, high class people and things like that. Where black people, the stereotype of black people is still kind of like a criminal, a thug, drug dealer, things like that. So to me, the money itself isn't really going to solve the problem, because there's wider problems that people are trying to address with reparations, namely the problem of how come black people are still at the bottom of society after 400, 500 years of being in this country, and new immigrants come in and pass them. Even the Hispanic immigrants seem to be doing slightly better than black people. And to me, that's the question of why. Why are people asking for reparations? Because if all black people were, kind of like upper middle class, and there were no black ghettos, or at least not huge black ghettos with the highest crime rates in the country, personally, I think that less people would be asking the question of reparations in the first place. And so to me, you need to address these wider social issues in the wider context of society. And to me, it seems like the question of assimilation, the IQ question, and other kind of culturally relevant questions that may or may not be due to, biology, or they might be have historical relevance, that are the reasons why black people can't seem to, quote unquote, get ahead in American society. And throwing money at the problem isn't really going to fix that. Like, for example, with assimilation, part of being a quote unquote American, whatever that means, is this idea of assimilation into the culture, and recognizing certain cultural phenomenon like the Constitution, and a certain type of American work ethic, and things like that, things that people would say are American. I know it's hard to define what is and isn't American, but just in general, and I know a lot of black people would say that it's white things. They're white things. These are white American things, or things that white people do. But if you look at the other ethnicities, some of those things that they also participate in, so you can't really say that they're just white things. And the more successful immigrant groups, like Northeast Asians and, some Africans like the Nigerians and things like that, they mimic some of these quote unquote white characteristics. And that's part of the reason why they're quote unquote getting ahead in American society. And the question of assimilation is, it's very difficult, because for black people especially, we were forced to come here. We didn't volunteer to become Americans or whatever. And so therefore, we should have a certain right to maintain some cultural sovereignty, in a sense, because we didn't ask to be Americans. We're just here. And then on top of all the other difficulties, you have this choice of whether you're going to either become quote unquote white or remain black, and then have to have all these like kind of cultural memes, I guess you could say, in a way, maintained, where it's like you have to talk a certain way, dress a certain way, act a certain way, otherwise you're not considered black. And so from that, I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but it is a limitation on assimilation. And assimilation is one of the factors that's going to allow your group to, quote unquote, get ahead or not get ahead. And so, these are like really difficult issues. They're like kind of philosophical issues of whether or not black people should assimilate or not assimilate into a culture that basically didn't have any respect for them for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then now they're saying, well, the only way that you can get ahead is if you act white, quote unquote, and remove yourself from the traditional type of style of living that black people have had. And I know that you personally, Big J, don't fully agree with the whole black stereotype thing, and that you definitely think that education and work ethic are something that everybody needs to have, and that respect for your community and things like that. But you have to admit that a lot of black people do see it that way, that there's a certain path, life path, that if you take that path, then you're considered white. You're considered white and you're abandoning the community and all this other stuff. Now, kind of related to that is when you're talking about the reallocation of funds and, cutting the military budget and things like that, and that, just the average, everyday, ordinary white people shouldn't have to pay the reparations. It should be the government itself. And I agree with that too. I agree that if anybody should be targeted for the treatment of black people in the past, it should be the government and not just your average, everyday kind of person. But at the same time, when you're talking about reallocating funds, just from an economic standpoint, if the government starts printing more money, all it's going to do is cause inflation and then make the money that black people do have worth less, and they'll have less purchasing power anyway. So that wouldn't really solve the problem if you just have the government print up a bunch of money and hand it out to people. And like you're saying, they could reallocate the funds, divert some funds from the military or welfare or from wherever, and give that to black people. I mean, that could work technically, but like I'm saying, I think that part of the problem isn't just the money, because there's a cultural kind of aspect to it too, where, even if black people got a bunch of money, like, it's kind of hard to explain, I guess, in a very straightforward way. But I mean, you can look at, for instance, something like the market itself. Like, there is a divide between the white market and the black market, like where black people have certain styles and tastes. Like, for example, like the guy that makes the hair shampoo or whatever, or what is it? It's like shea butter hair lotion or whatever the fuck it is for women. It's like, if he only made it for black women, he wouldn't have as much money as he does marketing different hair textures to white women and Latino women and Asian women too. And I think that that's part of the economic problem with black people, is that if black people are going to self-segregate, then their market is always going to be smaller. And then when you look at economically how black people are doing versus the wider society, white people or Asian people or Jewish people or whoever, there's always going to be a smaller profit. There's always going to be a smaller GDP just amongst the 10% of people in the country that are black, and then it was 13%. And then if a third of those people are children, then really you've only got 7 or 8% of the country that you're marketing to, if you're only marketing to black people. Like, if you're only in the BET crowd and you're only doing braids and you're only selling red, black, and green clothes and stuff like that, the market is always going to be smaller, and you're always going to see that economic divide. Because if you're only focusing on black people and what black people are doing, what black people are buying, that's cool. I don't have anything against that. I mean, I think that that's a good way to market your stuff. But then you can't turn around and say, well, black people don't have as much money as white people because we don't want to market anything to white people. That's just one example of, how the cultural divide and the not assimilating also economically affects black people. Now, when it comes to the IQ stuff, this is where I get the most disagreements from black people, because, I mean, if you look at the IQ testing and stuff, on average, Asian people are the smartest, and then Jewish people, and then white people. So there is some component of that. I mean, there's also nepotism and favoritism in hiring practices. I mean, I have no doubt about that. But there is also an aspect of that intelligence factor where, only a small percentage of even those groups are at the high end of the bell curve. Now, if you don't believe in IQ testing, or if you don't believe that IQ is a realistic factor in the world, and that there's some people that are more intelligent than other people, and that genetics does play a part in it, then I don't know how to explain it. Because to me, it seems to correspond. Like, you see certain groups and they're doing certain types of jobs that require certain type of intelligence, and there's more people in those groups that are doing those type of jobs, and there's more people in other groups that are doing other types of jobs. And so to me, like, that's something that you can't fix with money. Like, again, that's kind of like a cultural issue where, I mean, even beyond it being a cultural issue, it's kind of a eugenics issue. And like, that's one of my complaints about welfare in itself, is that it's dysgenic, because you're taking the people that already aren't the most productive people, and then you're incentivizing those people to reproduce at the expense of more productive people. And so, I mean, I don't care what race or whatever you are. I mean, the welfare thing is just dysgenic in a sense. And that's a strong, like, there's a strong cultural attitude towards that in the black community, where black people kind of think, well, we need the welfare because we're stuck in these ghettos or whatever, and, the whole single mom thing and all that type of stuff. And again, it's kind of like you're asking the government for help. The government's supposed to help you, but they're not helping you. And there's all types of strings attached, like fatherless homes. So, like, to me, it's just a much wider issue than just handing out money to black people and calling it a day at that. Because, I mean, honestly, if they were to do that, then they would call it a day. And then a lot of the, cultural and social problems that are facing black people, a lot of white people and just people in society at large would probably wash their hands of it at that point completely. I mean, there's already a lot of animosity because, like you said, there are white people living in trailer parks, and nobody's talking about giving them extra money and extra stuff, and they're doing just as bad as some black people. And so it is going to cause animosity. And then people are going to, especially the liberals, if they were able to do that, then they would say, hey, we tried to help, and we gave you guys this money. Well, what else do you want now? Now you want more stuff? Now you want this? Now you want that? Now you want us to do this? Because it's like, if you're saying that that's going to solve the problem, handing out money to black people is going to solve all the social and cultural problems that black people have, people might actually believe you and then give you the money. And then when that doesn't solve all the problems, then what are you going to say? Then, well, we need more money, or now you got to change this law, or do this or do that. And after a while, people are just going to be like, we already tried so much. We've tried this. We've tried that. We've given you money. We did this. You did that. There's still problems. And, like I agree with you a lot on the education, because like your point on the fact that they spend more money keeping people in jail in Texas than they do educating young children in the school system. I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course, if they were to take more money and spend it on kids, and I know a lot of the IQ people will say, oh, that's a bad idea because your IQ is fixed and you can't get any smarter, so throwing more money at the kids isn't going to help. But I think up to a certain point, it can help. I mean, making sure that the kids are getting healthy meals at school, not just like whatever government issued meals that they have at the schools, and, getting the proper educational equipment at least up to the same level as would be in a quote unquote white county or a white state. I mean, that should be being able to be done. Things like that. And, a lot of it is just changing the social attitudes of people towards this idea of being successful and being white, or, being a good businessman, being white, or speaking in a more mainstream type of American English as being white. I mean, until you can change those type of ideas, and the fact that all white people aren't out to get you, and all white people aren't evil, and they're all trying to get you. And I know that you don't think that, but again, we're talking in general about black people, that, these type of attitudes and just kind of social, I guess, yeah, just social attitudes towards, how things are culturally, and also recognizing the fact that, yeah, black people are in a messed up position, but asking for the government to help isn't going to help. I mean, it's the same reason why I don't believe in electing presidents. It's like, what do you think? Some guy is going to come and save you? He doesn't care. The president doesn't care about you. He doesn't even know who you are. He doesn't know who you are. He doesn't care. So it's like, as long as people still have the mind state that someone or something else is going to help them out of their situation, they're going to be in their situation. As long as people think that, oh, if I could just get, $80,000 from the government, that's going to fix everything. And I mean, it might improve your standard of living for a little while, but that it can only take you so far. It's kind of like that, teach a man to fish thing, where it's like they can hand out fish all day, but if you don't know how to fish, you're going to end up hungry eventually anyway. So yeah, that's really all I had to say about that. It's kind of an off-the-cuff video. Sorry that it's not completely formatted, but that's just what I was thinking about. And yeah, don't take my videos so seriously, because a lot of them are just really cynical kind of videos where I'm just like, whatever. And also take note of the fact that I have a kind of more libertarian position where I just, whenever somebody says government, I'm like, no, we don't want them. The best thing they could do is leave us alone and let us do our own thing, and we'll sort it out between ourselves, make contracts or make deals or figure it out within a local area or within a culture, ethnicity, whatever it is. People will come to some type of agreement or conclusion on their own, and the government rarely ever helps. Rarely, very rarely. So that's all I got for this one. Have a good day and go MGTOW.